No, Heather, I get up and down just like you do when you're signing.
I know, I like to stand.
There's a jack in the box at the table.
It's the only way I get exercise is getting up and down.
I want to welcome you all here. This is the first time we've had all four. I know Robert's been here and Heather's been here. Amanda's been here before too.
Yes.
Ronnie, welcome for the first time.
Thank you very much.
I have to just tell you that we wouldn't all be here, none of us, had it not been for us being able to exploit Ronnie's wonderful reputation as an actress and John Saxon's incredible body of work back in 1984, because we raised the money to make this movie on their names. You know, Ronnie being fresh from Nashville then, and I think John from Electric Horseman with Robert Redford, and that's the only reason we got the financing for the movie was on John and Ronnie. So it's just great to have Ronnie along on this ride now. 30th anniversary!
Am I live?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Robert. And I was just thinking that, well, I might have made 15 or 20 movies by the time that we did Nightmare on Elm Street. And it was also because of Bob Shea, the producer's secretary, who had been the secretary for my former husband, that got me the job. And then I guess first it was John's name that they raised the money with, and then secondly it was my name, so that they could actually get a start date and start shooting. But even though I thought it would be a hit, and even though I asked to get a percentage of the profits, which I did not get, never too late, but, oh, maybe it is too late. But Robert took a part that had very few words, very few spoken words, and with it he created a $1 billion franchise, along with a 19-year-old girl from Tucson who gave a magnificent performance. And so there. And Robert, by the way, was a veteran actor of so many theatrical productions that when we get together, I never know which one he's going to mention, and he's worked with everyone.
Ronnie and I have been commiserating
years.
about Sandy Dennis, because Mark Patton, who's also one of the guests here at Spooky Empire, Mark from the star of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, did a great film with Sandy called Come Back to the 5 and 9, Jimmy Dean. He also did the Broadway play with an all-star cast. Everybody, Cher, I mean, everybody was in that. And Ronnie knew a lot of those actresses as well. And Ronnie and I get a couple of cocktails in this. We start reminiscing because some of those great actresses are gone now. And it's just, we remember loving them back in the 70s.
Yes. And I think I'm the oldest one. And I won't be around forever. So it's just such an honor to be here, and to think that you would be willing to part with your hard-earned cash for my signature or my picture is truly rewarding, and I am so grateful to you all. Thank you.
I want to thank you for bringing in some terrific memorabilia. I've seen some unbelievably rare video store, Clio award-winning, that's the Oscar of advertising, Mad Men, video store window advertising art that I had to tell the fans was even rarer than they knew. And some great tie posters of Nightmare on Elm Street have showed up at this convention. And I love seeing that stuff, you guys. So thanks for bringing it in. And the t-shirts. And just the male chauvinist pig in me now, since I've already worked over these two. I love my little Freddiettes. Thank you, girls.
Now, the film was considered an instant success. And since then, obviously, it's spawned many sequels and even a remake. What do you attribute to the longevity of the film? I mean, it's grown, and the fan base obviously is large, huge, and continues to grow. What do you attribute that to?
Heather, why don't you, because Heather, you guys know Never Sleep Again, Heather's documentary. Heather has thought about this much more intellectually than I have. I think Heather.
Yeah, right. Robert's the true intellectual, but I think the story is extremely, it resonates. Revenge stories are always very, people really love revenge stories, but it's also a friendship story. It's also a story about mothers and daughters. It's a story about divorced parents. It's a story about nightmares. It touches so many different kinds of stories that people love and have listened to throughout time. And somehow Wyss interweaved them all together in a really believable, yet simple structure that anybody in any time period, it seems like, can relate to. So I think that is the key to its success. And also, it's such a beautiful movie to watch. Even watching it today, it's so simple, and the set decoration is so great. And there's not a lot of clutter, but there's just enough to inform each character. If you look at our bedrooms, they're filled with great set decoration, and they don't take that much time anymore everything looks like a Restoration Hardware catalog, or looks like a hotel, like they shot it in a Hilton or something like that. So that is very special about that movie too.
I think also there's a great simple, and in the simplicity that Heather just brought up, the simplest thing and the easiest thing to hook up the nightmare, the bad dream, the dream landscape. Hollywood had exploited that in MGM movies and musicals for years, in fantasy dance sequences in Oklahoma, on Broadway, and in the movie, and in lots of movie musicals, whether it's American in Paris or other great movie musicals, and in film noir, in some of the great detective movies.
Yeah.
There's lots of dream sequences in those too, and Dick Powell or Robert Mitchum gets conked over the head, and he's had some reefer, and he goes into some kind of dream where he solves the crime. But nobody before Wes Craven exploited the dream for the purposes of pure horror, and the fact that yours truly got to get into your underwear drawer, look into your diary, and knew what bug you were afraid of, and exploit that and violate that very private space. I mean, it all gets handed back to Wes for coming up, and it is simple. It's so simple.
It's extremely simple.
A boogeyman, and I think Wes always intended it as a kind of a dark fairy tale. If you're a fan of Part 7 of Wes Craven's New Nightmare, like I am, and Wes made that film for you guys. He did that with love in his heart for you guys because he respects you so much. But there's a sequence in that where Heather's child follows sleeping pills.
Yes.
And what is that? That's Hansel and Gretel. That's Hansel and Gretel leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. And this is the kind of gravitas and the kind of smart Wes Craven add to all of the films that he had a hand in that I really love.
Oh, and I'm reading that story, Hansel and Gretel, to Dylan in the opening scene when we're going to bed. I mean, those kinds of simple details. Yeah, I mean, Wes thinks of all of them. I wish I could take credit.
We also had hot girls in their underwear too.
Hot girls in their underwear.
White guys, come on, fanboys. How many of us love the Amanda Wyss Tina nightgown?
And Johnny Depp in a cut-off t-shirt.
Yes.
And Nick Corey without a shirt.
Yes.
And baby Johnny Depp.
Now, does anybody have any questions? We have a microphone there in the center of the aisle. Please feel free to stand up, walk into the mic. There you go. First question.
Hello? Robert, one of my favorite bands, Dokken. What was it like working with those guys?
Well, I don't want to take up too much time, but I do have a great story. You guys know the show CSI? That's shot in an old beater industrial space out in the low desert or high desert behind the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. And it's where Magic Mountain is, the theme park. And we were the first people ever to use that area. We shot Nightmare 4 out there, and they shot the doc and video with me, with Freddy in it out there. And but the thing is, you know, the dancers, union dancers, aren't allowed to dance on concrete because they can get shin splints from it. It's kind of like, that's why you shouldn't jog on concrete. So we shot 24/7. We shot 24 hours on the sound stage that later became the CSI stage. And all the guys in docking got colds because it was the middle of winter. And the concrete was so cold, they had to stand around in their heavy metal Beatle boots all day. You know? So a lot of those guys aren't as tall as you think they are. Their mothers made them take piano lessons instead of going out for baseball or football. And but I'll tell you what, you wrap their hair and you put them in high heels and they look pretty sexy. But as all the ladies here on the panel will tell you, it's no fun wearing those shoes all the time, especially on concrete. And they all went down, all the band went down. And then years later, I got to visit Don at his place out right near Heather's house, just a little bit north of the famous Malibu Beach. And Don actually, he had a recording studio there, and he answered the door in a kimono. And it was incense, and he had classical music on. He's really a Renaissance man. But they kept the drummer in a separate elevator entrance. He had to go down to his own studio to keep that music separate because those guys couldn't play with him playing. Because that guy was such an insane, rad drummer.
And they still hate each other, I know that.
But they had to like record separately. To this day, there's a park in Tokyo where all the boys look like Johnny Depp did in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1, and they all dress like George, the guitar player. He's still a guitar god there. And he says that it's a certain look, like it's somewhere between Keith Richards and Joe Perry, Aerosmith's guitarist. That's a look that the Japanese love, and it's a real aesthetic for them that they like. It's that kind of skinny, tight jean leg boy rock star look with that feathery hair. And there's like literally boys that impersonate George in Tokyo to this day. He's such a guitar god there. That's my docking story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey guys, my name is George, and I want to say, guys, it's a dream come true meeting you guys. Right now, you guys really know how to scare the shit out of a little kid when I was a little boy. So. And my question is, how do you guys feel? You can be honest, man. I'm gonna be honest. How do you guys feel about the remake? You be honest, you know. I can keep a secret.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, good.
I haven't seen it.
What is the 2 hours?
I haven't seen it.
I'm a Robert Englund girl.
And you know, not to take anything away from Jackie Earl Haley, because he is a great actor.
He's a great actor.
He will never be Freddy Krueger.
I don't think it's entirely Jackie's, I don't want to say fault or responsibility if people thought that they didn't see where Jackie was going with the role. I think perhaps that director maybe encouraged a couple of ideas that had been spun out by producers or Jackie that shouldn't have been embraced. And it's only things you learn in hindsight. The makeup, and Heather, listen, Heather sleeps with makeup effects. You know, Heather's probably got somewhere on her right now, she's got some glue. I'd like to know where, but anyway, Heather knows, and Heather will attest to this too. It's a brilliant makeup in the remake on Jackie. The problem is, it's earthbound. It's too real. Freddy only exists in the imagination of his potential victims, the children, the offspring, the relatives of the parents of Elm Street that wronged Freddy, that burned Freddy alive. 2 wrongs don't make a right. So, he's a story around a campfire. He's something that you talk about at the locker in middle school. He's a rumor you heard smoking a joint, you know. Really, and so he's in everybody's imagination. He's not real. He's not a realistic serial killer walking along. And that makeup is so real.
Well, Robert, you also talk about how the silhouette against the darkness is is such an important element of any monster,
Yeah.
and that the weakness of the nose and the weakness of the skin and the hat, it all just didn't have that power that the original.
Jackie's cartilage is all burned away. So when Jackie goes profile in silhouette, he loses that strength. I fought for the hat. Wes wanted to put me in a goddamn Paperboy's hat, you know. Read all about it, Springwood Slasher. And I said, no. And this is the fedora is Wes's script, but Wes got cold feet. Bob Shea, perhaps, I don't know. But I remember one day sitting, and they were like trying all these hats on me. You know, Heather's running around trying on pajamas in the background. And I said, no, I fought for the fedora. They thought I was going to look too much like Harrison Ford. And I said, no, because the fedora can hide me. I can hide with the shadow. I can raise my head and drop it and hide my eyes and reveal my eyes. And I can take the hat off and reveal my disfigured baldness and my scars on my skull. And so we had to fight for that. But the way I sold it was I did a thing. I showed my shadow on the wall and how strong it looked as a silhouette. And they robbed Jackie of some of the strength of his own silhouette by diminishing his nose. Heather's right, and her nose is gone. And it's a great factual, medical, clinical burn victim look.
Well, I know too in LA, all the sculptors that we hire also sculpted on that. I think they went through, I heard 10 different sculpts. They wanted to change it enough from you, but then I think they failed ultimately because they should have maybe kept it more similar, perhaps.
Or let Jackie go somewhere else. Let Jackie be hapless. Let Jackie be hapless. Let him embrace his size, like a little rabid dog. And I think that there was a compromise there, and I don't blame anybody for that. And my main objection is I think they just brought the movie out too soon, because right after the Blu-ray box sets came out, a whole new generation of fans sat down with their fathers, 12-year-old boys on sleepovers in Sears sleeping bags with hunters shooting geese on the flannel insides and eating some cold pizza in front of a flat screen in the man cave. They all saw me chase Heather around her bedroom in digital Blu-ray on a 50-inch flat screen. It looks better than when it came out. It was in Hell's Octoplex, you know, in South Orlando.
Hi, my name's Van, and I kind of have a silly question, but I kind of wanted to ask it forever, so I just figured I'd come up here and ask. Probably when you're having a nightmare, the only relief you can hope to get is if you realize that you're having a nightmare. Now, this doesn't work if you're having a nightmare about Freddy Krueger, which I've had several. So, and I'm like, oh my God, wake me up, just be Nancy, be Nancy, be Nancy. So, which, by the way, be Nancy. So, my question for you is this. Have any of you ever actually had a Freddy Krueger nightmare?
Well, I never really had terrible ones until Nightmare 7, and K&B, who designed the makeup for Nightmare 7, created these very long tongues, as you remember, that wrapped around my head. And a couple months, I think, after we had finished shooting, my husband found me kneeling in front of our fireplace, like just trying to get these tongues, and I'm like, get them off me, you know, to help me. And he said that it was the first time he'd ever found me sleepwalking, but also I was obviously dreaming about that scene. And those dreams haunted me for quite a while, and I finally actually went to seek help because they were terrible dreams to have. And it turned out that day on the set with the humiliating team at K&B making all these jokes about KY and phallic symbols, like it really, really disturbed me. And to this day, I realized it was like the worst day of shooting I think I ever spent. And there was the days before sexual harassment was like something we are trained to prevent in our workplace. And I can tell you, guys, they needed the training.
Amanda, do you dream of Freddy ever? I know, Amanda just dreams about her beautiful leading men like Kevin Costner. Never dreams about him.
Glad I don't have scary dreams about Freddy. I would come unglued. I am not calm like Heather. They would be the undoing of me. I'd be doubly undone by Freddy.
But Amanda, you literally have been in the most vicious, insane sequence in any of the films. I mean, do you ever remember that in a nightmare way, or is it just, you just remember all the technical stuff, or what?
No, you know what? I remember that shooting my death scene vividly, more so than almost any other scene I can ever remember filming. And I had an interesting thing happen on Friday. I went to Harry Potter World, and I rode the ride, and it started going, and I got incredibly dizzy, and I felt my inner ear going, and I had to close my eyes the whole time. And I literally, the whole time on the ride, was thinking of my death scene, shooting there, because I got vertigo when I shot that scene. And I was so...
Nightmare at Hogwarts.
Potter World, on the ride, I was so upset. And we got off, and Heather was like, wasn't that great? And we were like, and I had my eyes closed the whole time, and I was so upset, and I was like, it was terrible. And Heather was like, you had your eyes closed the whole time? I was like, I got vertigo. I was freaking out. But yeah, so this is the first time, and maybe it's the 30th anniversary, but I completely relived my death scene.
You're in a fear loop.
I'm in a fear loop.
Ronnie, when you were preparing for the mom, and I know Ronnie's talked about this, about a lot of the work was mother-daughter work for her, because that's really important. Actors always want to work on relationships, but did you ever get into the kind of horror, nightmare, occult, for lack of a better word, part when you were repping? Because you had to have memories of me killing those other children, right?
Well, I didn't, in my work for prep, there were some things that I may have used that I hope you forgive me, but that I keep private.
Of course, yeah.
So there are some things like that.
So
There are other
this is the
things-
classic, it's called effective memory. Ronnie will tell
Some
it.
people call it sense memory.
Sense memory,
In
yeah.
other words,
It's a
you-
trick actors use, yeah.
Yes, and I think of myself in many ways as a method actor and Stanislavski, where one major thing about Stanislavski was, for example, in his book, by the way, it wasn't in person, of course, he's long gone, but he would say that a scene not only had a beginning, middle, and end, a project not only had a beginning, middle, and end, but that from the time you set off in your action, it's a flowing thing. Now, you can take that then, extrapolate as I do, because I'm also a musician, to think in terms of phrasing. A musical line, if you start to hum it, you don't go in the middle. I mean, you start it and you finish the tune. And it may get a little louder and a little softer, a little louder and a little softer. It may repeat. It has phrasing. So as an actor, you think of those things, but you don't want to think of them while you're working. So his book, for example, is called An Actor Prepares. So part of the thing that I do when I prepare is I practice to see if I can make what I'm doing real. And sometimes I practice it on the street, because I feel if it passes muster on the street, then it's believable. And
I used to do that. In the 70s, my first 3 starring roles, I played Southerners. And I would go to bars in the South and talk in character.
Exactly.
And if the guy gave me a beer, I thought I passed.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, one thing I did, and Nancy and I did, I mean, I always do this, Heather and I did. Sorry,
Wait a minute, there's buttons all over here that say I am Nancy.
Do it. Plus his wife was Nancy. But I had a daughter named Sarah, and as an example, a few nights ago she wrote me on Facebook and said, "Mom, will you look at my photos, my Facebook photos, and help me choose the best ones?" I said yes, of course. It's a big honor for me for her to ask me, and then I go through and look at all of her pictures and say, I think this one's better than the next one, and then the next day I look and the one that I like the best is the one that she put up. So when we were doing Nightmare, I said to Heather, let's go to the Sherman Oaks Galleria and look for you a prom dress. And we'll go as mom and daughter. So we did, and she tried on dresses, and I would tell her which one was more beautiful than the next. Heather is a gorgeous woman, so everything is going to look good on Heather. But some things are going to look better than others, right, ladies?
Yes.
And who can you trust? Your mom, right? She's going to tell you the truth. So we went and we shopped for a prom dress, and some things looked better than others, and we found ways to bond that made us feel natural when we got together on the set. It was a little bit difficult. Marge was a little bit of a difficult character because it was intentional when Wyss wrote the role that it not be completely evident from the very beginning whether Marge was good or bad. In other words, Marge was obviously good taking care of her daughter, but there were a couple of times that the way Wyss wrote it that you had to wonder, And so then Marge, when she gave the claws, took the claws from the furnace in the basement, and then, Marge is a murderer. Good old Marge, off Freddy. For anybody who hasn't seen the movie, I'm sorry.
While Ronnie and Heather were at the famous Sherman Oaks Galleria, they ran into a young, hot, sexy, beautiful little blonde walking around, trying to be recognized from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Amanda was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and they shot it. That's a bad joke.
Now, speaking of the whole mother-daughter aspect of the film, Heather, I believe you mentioned in an interview once that in the scene where Ronnie slaps you, she actually did slap you.
Well, it was an accident, but we were very close together. We were very close together, and it was a very intense scene. And I think we both were very carried away with the reality of what was going on. And I think on screen slaps are really tough to do because you have to kind of move away from camera and do it in perfect timing and make it look really great. And it was, it's not something I would have ever dwelled upon. It was not a really big deal, but those accidents happen all the time. Freddie too got me a couple of times with his blades.
I think I heard Heather more in part 7 than Ronnie heard you in part 1.
Yeah, but you just can't. When you're really in the moment, those kinds of very close contacts. We had incredible fights, Robert and I. And yeah, you'd bump your head and you would get smashed against the wall.
Heather would have like my fingerprints on her arm.
But actually, those are my favorite scenes. I always felt that my best scenes are my very physical scenes, and the quiet, scenes where you're talking. I always feel really self-conscious, but the running, jumping, getting beaten up by Freddy, those were always my best scenes.
George, I have to say that to me that is absolutely untrue. When we do action scenes in films, we rehearse them very carefully. They're choreographed and they're worked so that, for example, if you go to strike someone, the person being struck has to do this. You understand what I'm saying? It's like a ballet. And there are people who specialize in constructing those scenes. And Wyss would never allow Heather to be struck. So although we're aiming for the emotional reality and the intensity that is the reason that you're here 30 years later, no, I did not hit Heather. When we're doing a scene, it's a duet. And, I'm not kidding. It really
It's a tango. It's a tango. It's a dance.
It's a duet. And
But sometimes you get your toes stepped on.
and some things are more dangerous than others. It's true. You have to be careful. But if you are going to go for the passionate intensity and to make it as real as you can, then you do want to go for it. But of course, the other actor has got to, roll with the punches. He's got to give. All stage and movie action, as you can see, complicated cowboy, saloon fights, all these things, all the immaculate Bruce Lee things, these are all rehearsed intently, and people give and take, and yes, we go for as much reality as we can, and as much intensity as we can, but no, I would never hit Heather. I'm a professional actor. I would never do that. And Wyss would never permit that to happen.
And if you watch Ronnie's performance in The First Nightmare, Ronnie knows tone. Part of Ronnie's musical gift is to understand delineation and style. And there's a word used for horror films, it's called melodrama sometimes. And it's a reality that you believe in, but it's kicked up just a little bit. And when I say kicked up, I'm not saying false, but it means that maybe you can wallow in the neuroses of your character a little more, or allow that to be seen. And you watch Ronnie's performance in hindsight in Nightmare on Elm Street 1, and I've said this with love to Ronnie, and Ronnie knows what I mean, but there's a certain Tennessee Williams quality to Ronnie's performance in that, which allows us, because Ronnie has to teach us the story. Not only does Ronnie get to react to Heather and react to John, but she has to tell the story. So she has to set her up for that, so she's not just some goddamn maid or butler coming out in the first act going, well, the master's not at home, you know, he's got syphilis, you know, which is how they used to construct exposition in the old days. She really has to take that moment and tell the story of Freddy Krueger, and she has to be there with Marge's neuroses and her own damaged relationship with her daughter and everything else that's going on. And she knew to kick it up, because without that slight kick to it, we wouldn't go down that road, because it is a horror movie. It's not a documentary. And you need that stuff. You need to recognize it. You guys all know when you see actors on television, nothing I hate more in this world, because you guys have been so good to me and so loyal, and now we're in the top 10 every week, science fiction, fantasy, and horror. There's nothing I hate more than seeing an actor I love, a Robert De Niro or someone that I love on a talk show, apologizing for being in a horror movie. Well, it's not really a horror movie, it's a psychological thriller. No, it's a fucking horror movie, and that's why it stinks. You know, because you guys didn't embrace it.
Hi, this is a dream come true to be here and speak in front of you guys. You guys all signed my work earlier, my drawings that I brought to you, and
We're going to sign you in a minute, come on.
Yes. So thank you for being so gracious. My question was actually asked by somebody else earlier, so I'll have to rethink of another one. Would you be willing to do a prequel to a Nightmare on Elm Street, preferably a trilogy?
Well, you know, I mean, Heather would have to be played by a child. Yeah, and Amanda. No, here's the problem. There was a great script. I don't know if you guys know, we all love Michael Rooker, right, on Walking Dead. Michael Rooker starred in a movie called Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, directed by John McNaughton. And John McNaughton was apparently on deck to do the prequel. There was a prequel script flitting around. I had done a bit of a prequel sequence in a script I submitted for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. And I heard this script that John McNaughton was going to do, docudrama style, was great. I think it was called The First Kills. Krueger, The First Kills. And the best parts in it weren't Freddy Krueger. Wasn't Freddy Krueger. Or young Marge. Or baby Nancy. The best part were the lawyers who got Freddy off. Got Freddy out of jail, yeah. And they were like these sort of Jekyll and Jekyll lawyers. They were supposed to be great. So that's I would love to have done that movie in 2004, but now it's all changed with Time Warner and Platinum Dunes and Michael Bay. They're remaking, they're rebooting four franchises, and for a new audience. And then Hollywood does this. You know, we can't hate Hollywood for this. All the movies that our grandparents saw were remakes of silent films, so we can't be real snobby. I've made 2 of my biggest paychecks in remakes. Well, one of my biggest paychecks in remakes. I did Phantom of the Opera. You know, and it's been done like 6 times. Yeah. So I'm not the guy to worry about that. But in terms of a prequel, I'm probably too old now. I mean, there was a moment in time, maybe 10 years ago, where I could have dyed my hair ginger, you know, and still done that. Because I always saw Freddy as a kind of a redhead, you know. And I would have made, maybe, but I think it's past for me. And maybe somebody else will come in and grab the torch.
That's a lie. No. You can do it.
How about Freddy babysits for baby Tina?
How you guys doing? I know I've been bugging you guys and bothering you guys all weekend, always pestering you for autographs and everything. I just can't help it. You guys are idols to me my entire life. And I've been meaning to ask this all weekend long. How do you guys feel about each individual sequel? I mean, like, you have Wes's masterpiece, and then as they go, you know, they get less scary and more goofy and campy and whatnot. How do you each of you feel about how Freddy has taken a turn in that way?
Well, I'll speak. You said Freddy. It's real simple. The first one is the classic, and it's the scariest. But I have to be honest. I love watching Wes Craven's New Nightmare because I'm always finding little subtle things in it. I'm not saying it's superior, but it looks great on Blu-ray, and I'm always finding new stuff in it. I think, if we polled everybody, and I say this in all love and respect to the people sitting next to me, Heather was in it, but I think the fan favorite's probably part 3. And
Yes.
I like my work in part 4 the best. Because Freddy's, I think, a little meaner and a little snakier and a little crueler, even than in part 1. So that's just my opinion. I think that we broke some rules, and we broke the Bible, the Wes Craven Bible in part 2, and I think we got a little too silly pushing the envelope in part 6, although I love Rachel Talalay, and that was intentional, but I don't think it was a successful experiment. But that's but I mean, always, and this is the 30th anniversary, always. And you know, Heather and I and Amanda and Ronnie, we see it now, and we can see where we glue things together, and we can see where they run out of money, and we know, and we had to, like, you know, just pray that we were going to finish it. But part 1 is the classic. It's the King Kong. It's the Wizard of Oz. It's our little primitive, low-budget gem that touched the entire world. Heather's really cute part 3. Even with her 80s shoulders.
I know.
First off, thank you guys for making an incredible film. I mean, all of us, I know, have seen it thousands of times. We all love it. You guys did an incredible job. Obviously, that every horror movie, there's the psychological aspect and the actual physical fear factor of it. For the entire cast, what is the scariest thing about Freddy, both psychologically and physically?
I think the victims should answer this.
Well, the scariest thing about Freddy is the gut-wrenching, almost nauseous fear that he inspires, touch into some deep Jungian recess of gathered human fear and some group unconsciousness of terror over probably thousands, if not millions of years. He touches something primordial, some terrible fear that we have. And when we dream, when we have nightmares, it may not be about Freddy with his face, but the feel of Freddy, the fear that someone's approaching you in a dark alleyway. Everyone has had that fear. Or that you can't get away, that you're stuck on the steps going up and you can't get away from the monster. We've all had those dreams, and there's just something that is universal about.
And I would add too that
Robert did.
The way that Freddy was able to scare each individual in his individual way, like Tina's afraid of Freddy in that alleyway, which is where she lived, and it wasn't Nancy's dream, it was Tina's dream in the alley. Nancy's dream is in the staircase. So every character has a relationship with Freddy that involves what their personal experiences are, and that's why, that's why Wes's invention is so complete, and why so many different fans relate to it. Because I know that the one that got me was when Kristen is washing her hands, and the faucet turns into Freddy's hands. You know, the simplest thing can be the way that Freddy enters your nightmare. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm afraid of spiders, Freddy's like a spider. It's devious and unpredictable ways that he scares you.
Yeah, Freddy knows your high school crush. He can exploit that, though.
Boogeyman.
He knows your most private thoughts. And that invasion, that molestation is pretty nasty. Right, Amanda? Thank you.
Yes.
What are you doing with that? What are you doing with that microphone? Ronnie?
I'm done now.
It's good for me.
Marge! I mean, what about poor Marge? I mean, what did Freddy do to Marge? He killed her twice. And once in the bed with a fire burning up. I mean, these actions that he takes, that Wyss has given, that Robert pulled off so incredibly, they run the gamut of every kind of fear that we have of an unknown monster.
Well, he also left Marge a wreck. His first crimes damaged you.
Yes,
Yeah.
Marge
Yeah.
was an
Left you
alcoholic
scarred.
because Freddy killed the children and because Marge was a murderess. She took gas and gasoline and put it around a shack and set it on fire and killed him.
Not quite.
What did she do? What did she do?
I didn't make it all the way to hell. I just took the local to purgatory.
Well, Freddy didn't die, and somehow, due to the dream sequence that Wyss wove and kept weaving, right up and to the end and through the end, you didn't really know when you were in the dream and when you were out of the dream. That was the genius of it.
That's what I love so much. We were talking like 2 questions ago about which movies we like, but that's what I love so much about The New Nightmare.
Yeah.
You watch that movie, watch Heather in that movie, and it's so subtle when the nightmares begin and end. It's really a brilliant blend of illusion and reality. When does the nightmare begin? Yes, next.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I just want to thank you guys for coming. You guys have been a really big part of my childhood, thanks to my mother, who loves horror movies. And I wanted to thank you very much for bringing such a multi-dimensional horror icon, who's both, we love him, we fear him, we laugh at his witty jokes, and I just always wanted to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I have a kind of like a 2-part question. First, what is your favorite thing that you said while killing somebody? And then the second one was just, what horror movies do you like, and did you apply any of your horror favorites to Freddy?
Well, let's start with Amanda. Let's just ask everybody what their favorite horror movies are. Amanda?
Oh, gosh. I go put on the spot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. No, all right. Well, this is funny. I don't know that it's actually a horror film, but one of the scariest movies, and it completely traumatized me and changed my life, was Jaws.
Yeah.
In a surfing beach town. I grew up swimming in the ocean, jumping off my dad's boat in the middle of the ocean, swimming, everything, our whole life was in the ocean. I saw that movie, and it ruined my entire life. I still like water skiing in a lake. When I wipe out, I'm freaking out till the boat comes back. I'm in a lake. In a pool at night, I hear that music.
Sci-Fi Channel has giant trout, I think.
Yeah. It's like, so I would have to say that is like hands down the scariest movie that actually completely, I have a life before Jaws and then a life after Jaws.
Heather, I've never...
I should say the first movie that scared me so much that I still actually am scared by is The Wizard of Oz. I just think the flying monkeys and the trees that grab you and the scary witch and the creepy guards. To me, that movie, because it used to just show on TV once a year at Thanksgiving, and I would put myself in a place where I knew I could run away when I got scared. But I loved watching it. And in a lot of ways, when I watch it now, I think I must have been thinking of Dorothy when I played Nancy, because a lot of the way that she handles her situations are, very Dorothy-like.
Ronnie, what's your favorite?
Body Snatchers.
Body Snatchers, yeah!
I saw that one when I was 10 at the Saturday afternoon, or 11, Saturday afternoon movie theater in Caldwell, Idaho, sitting next to my friend Janet Haynes, who was very tall, and I clung to her elbow the whole time. And then afterwards was looking every night in the closet for pods and underwear for pods forever.
I think, I gotta be really honest now about heartbeats in the dark. Because that's how I define a really great horror film. And 1974, Brian De Palma's sisters. William Finley, great mad scientist. Margot Kidder, incredible performance. And De Palma, brilliant De Palma with not any money at all. Taking us around and throwing curveballs at us. The silhouette shot of a knife going in Margot Kidder's boyfriend's mouth. And you think, oh, it's just a shadow shot. I don't have to really see it. And then he cuts to the knife being pulled out of the real actor. And William Finley, like a giant katydid, cutting the twins apart so he can make love to one of them. Oh, and the split screen sequence in terms of just suspense as they're trying to hide the body in the all-white sofa, in the all-white apartment that you think is all-white 70s chic until you realize it's all-white outpatient hospital white. And just a brilliant, brilliant film, and it really disturbed me. John Carpenter's The Thing. Whoa! Why are they shooting those dogs? Oh, please shoot those dogs! Great, great film. Really rocked my world. Really kind of upset me. Really disoriented me. And then a couple of years ago, my wife and I are in New Zealand, and we're in this romantic Greenwich Village part of Auckland, and we find a double bill of My Fair Lady and Deborah Carr in The Innocents, and I've never seen The Innocents on a big screen. Well, it's not only one of the most beautifully shot films in the world, but when you see it on the big screen with speakers, you hear the soundtrack. And as Deborah Carr goes up on the roof to see what's going on, and she's lost the children, and the doves fly off the roof, and you hear their wings flapping, and in the flapping of their wings, and the breeze on the roof, and the ruffling of her governess, black, floor-length, steampunk outfit, you hear buried in the soundtrack the children's voices whispering, "Don't touch me there, please don't touch me." It's unbelievable.
Well, that was my
Great
first
film.
job, was the play, The Innocents. That was my first professional job.
What did you play, the little girl?
I played the little girl.
Oh. I never knew this.
I started out as a stage actress before horror. That was also like before Jaws, after Jaws.
Yeah, so I did The Innocents, and then the next year I did The Bad Seed.
Oh, and The Bad Seed. The Bad Seed. The Bad Seed is in my book. But I saw The Bad Seed by accident at a Saturday matinee when I was supposed to be seeing like a Western starring Anthony Quinn, and all I remember was the horseshoe tap scars on a little boy's hands, where she took off her tap shoes and pounded him on the edge of the pier and made him fall off into the water because she lost the penmanship award at the summer camp. And Henry James, the great Henry Jones, who was on the Mary Tyler Moore Show and on Rhoda, the great Henry Jones is the janitor saying, "We got a little blue electric chair for boys, and a little pink electric chair for girls." Rhoda, give me, what will you give me for a basket of kisses? A bushel of hugs. Don't touch me. Oh, I was afraid of braids. I was afraid of girls with braids.
My father was sitting in front of one of the reviewers on opening night, and the reviewer turned to their friend and said, "I wouldn't let that little bitch back in my house." My dad was like, "I guess he's doing a good job."
Oh, I never knew. Those are two of my favorite projects.
Amazing.
Well, guys, unfortunately we're out of time, but I want to thank you all for
Thank
joining
you so
us.
much. You played the only Freddy. The only.
Thank you so much, Robert.